Okay, brilliant. I think we're going to start the webinar now. There will be a few stragglers who join late, but I'm sure they will catch up as we kind of work through our presentation. So without further ado, we can start. Hopefully everyone can see the opening slide of taking control of your NbS projects. So I'm delighted to be here and presenting this exciting journey. We will do introductions in a minute. There's a couple of us who are presenting. There is a chat function, there is the ability to ask questions, and we are going to put a poll up on screen. So please participate where you can, because that will make this a bit more exciting and always help everybody who is involved. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a poll up on the screen. If you can answer the questions, that would be great. It is anonymous, and we will share the results towards the end of the webinar. Like I say, anonymous, just answer as honestly as you can, and that will give us a couple of talking points later on as well. So I'm going to launch this now, and hopefully everybody can see that. I'm sure I will see some responses coming in. We'll answer questions towards the end as well, but while we're doing that and that poll is there, we will start the presentation. So, what are we here to talk about today? We have an agenda. We've kind of titled this as taking control of your NbS projects, nature-based solutions. So what we're going to talk about are a number of different things you can see on the screen. We've got some key business challenges, an introduction and overview of Earth Blox. We have a very exciting Earth Blox in action segment today. We are actually going to show the latest release of Earth Blox, so the most up-to-date and exciting features and functionalities, and we're going to walk through a nature-based solutions example in that Earth Blox in action. We will talk about some case studies, and then we'll recap, and we'll have some next steps should you wish to talk further or be interested. I can see people are already answering on the poll, so thank you very much. And we've already got a couple of questions in, which is always great, a good way to start. So introductions, I'm speaking, who am I? My name's Stephen Wright. I'm the head of sales at Earth Blox. Often means I get to do exciting things like this and host webinars and talk to all of our customers and prospects. So my role here today is to try and translate what we're seeing in the market and what we see about nature-based solutions from a customer and prospect point of view, because we're talking to people all over the world all the time in various different industries who are looking at this kind of work. I'm joined today, and this is really exciting because I've never done a webinar with this particular co-host, but I'm joined today by Dr. Geneviève Pantenode, who is our CEO and co-founder. And I won't do the disservice of trying to introduce her, but I will let her do that herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks, Stephen. So yeah, I'm associate professor at the University of Edinburgh, but I'm leading Earth Blox now full-time. And the rationale for me doing this is that I've been working in this field for about 20 years. I'm an IPCC contributing author on the good practice guidance for land use change and forestry. And it's very clear that the tools that are needed to address the challenges today are not in the hands of the right people, right? So those that have a real impact on the ground don't have the time to basically deal with learning to code, Earth observation expertise, and so on. So we built Earth Blox really to simplify the process and give you access to a wealth of insights in minutes rather than weeks. And if you have to learn to code from scratch, years. So yeah, without ado, I'll let Stephen continue with the presentation, and I'll give you a demo in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Geneviève. So as you see, there's a poll up. If you have answered the poll, great. Thank you very much. I will close it in a second as we move on to talk about some of the key business challenges that we find in the world of geospatial and Earth observation, but also related to nature-based solutions. So I will leave the poll open. If anyone can quickly answer it for about 5 more seconds, and then I will stop that. Test my skills of counting to 5. Right, I'm going to close that off. So thank you very much. We'll share that poll towards the end for everybody to have a look at some of the data. It's anonymized. You won't see who's answered, and neither can we actually. So that is done. Thank you very much. So we're moving on. Some key business challenges that we're noticing in the market, and people that we're talking to, whether or not that's NGOs, charities, businesses, or anyone else who's working in the arena of geospatial. The demand for satellite imagery analysis is increasing rapidly. Those working in nature-based solutions, carbon offsetting, ESG, investing, it's kind of exponential growth. And a United Nations report from last year reported that investment into NbS is expected to triple by 2030 and increase fourfold by 2050 to meet net zero targets. I suspect that's probably already out of date, and people who have joined this webinar might have their own opinion on that, and that's probably going to accelerate. But with this, this increase of investment and need for working to hit these targets, we're seeing an increasing need for quick evaluation or an increasing need for repetitive analysis to constantly get results over and over again of things that are changing regularly in the landscape. This also means that there's more roles for people in the business, for example, commercial teams conducting assessments of area to invest in, or on the ground teams providing reporting. Doesn't just sit now with these geospatial experts. That isn't to say those people are redundant. It just means that there's more people getting involved. Like I say, more people are getting involved. What does that mean for the job market? Well, the job market for geospatial analysts is exploding, with the US government predicting a shortage of trained GIS specialists within the next decade. I can share some of these sources with anybody who might be interested to take a proper in-depth read later on. But this is some kind of key information that we're seeing in the market, because a client also told us recently that everybody wants to hire GIS specialist right now. It's the key skill in their sector. And if you have a look at LinkedIn or any other job board, you will see that that is also the case. We did some analysis the other day and found that there was over 100, closer to 150 jobs a day being posted in this realm. So how does that affect people working with nature-based solutions? It's a growing market, but that also means that the need for geospatial analysis is costly, and these costs can be prohibitive. Some consultants can charge up to £10,000 to £20,000. I won't do the full conversion into all the different currencies, but £10,000 to £20,000 for a few months of project analysis. That, coupled with the fact that field work is time and labour intensive, and alternatives like drone monitoring and LiDAR are also expensive, mean getting the results that you want, getting the results you want quickly, aren't cost effective. So how do you change that? How do you get the results you want in nature-based solutions, looking at biodiversity and carbon stocks and things like that? Well, I think this is where Earth Blox comes in. We have a vision, we have a product, we have a tool. That's why we're hosting the webinar as well, to talk about some of this. And we'll give an example in Earth Blox in action shortly on nature-based solutions. But how do we tackle these challenges? Well, our vision is that everyone everywhere addressing these SDGs should be able to benefit from amazing intelligence geospatial data offers. Democratizing the access to this data, making it easier. When you're looking at commercial analysts or project developers, they shouldn't have to just rely on the experts. This data should be in the hands of everybody. So using satellite data to hit net zero should be simple and effortless, but at the same time powerful, and give proper analysis and proper results. So Geneviève has already spoken about some of her expertise over the years. I'm sure she was just being humble. There's many more to speak about, but we were also founded by other experts as well. So we have an academic background, and we have experts in-house, remote sensing scientists and PhDs who have been in this industry for decades. And they saw the need to make easy and affordable access to this data to accelerate change within the industry. So how that's how we help. What does it do overall? In a nutshell, kind of the elevator pitch, it enables you to meet increasing demand for project assessments and monitoring. It brings your remote sensing capabilities in-house. That allows you to control costs and results and time. But it also gives this access, this data, to people who want to run their own analysis. Project managers, commercial managers, on the ground team. Is a user-friendly tool designed exactly for those people. It also allows you to automate repetitive analysis, freeing up time. As I said earlier, this isn't making GIS specialists redundant, but it's allowing them to have more of a focus on the complex projects that they want to work on, that they want to do, that might require their time, that isn't kind of the repetitive individual tasks. So that's some of the challenges that we've seen and how Earth Blox could potentially help. This is some of our customers that work with us. We're trusted by customers around the world for a wide range of use cases, not just nature-based solutions, but reforestation, deforestation projects, monitoring and alerts, verification for carbon credits, as well as insurance risk modeling. So you can see a number of those on the screen. Not all of those, as you might have noticed, are businesses or NGOs. Some of them are educational institutes. They're using Earth Blox to train the future geospatial and environmental analysts, the future of the industry. The business is booming, as we've already discussed, about people coming into the industry. So we're giving that tool tools to them to be able to use it. Now, as you said, this webinar is about nature-based solutions. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Geneviève, who's going to talk through a very exciting a number of slides with a kind of demonstration of Earth Blox, the latest iteration of Earth Blox, the newest kind of hot off the press version. So I will pass over to Geneviève to do that.
Great, thank you very much, Stephen. Right, everybody. So what I'm going to do now is basically dive into a use case, and I think there's no better way to demonstrate the usefulness and the simplicity of Earth Blox than just to dive into what it does. So Ashley is actually one of our users. She works for ADM Capital Foundation, which is a philanthropic foundation that invests heavily in projects around Southeast Asia. They're interested in funding projects where you have a confluence of different interests that actually merge together. So you have high commodity production, so palm oil plantation, for instance, or it could be other commodities where you find, perhaps a concentration of livelihood that needs to be supported, villagers and local population, but also where you have a really high concentration of endemic species and species that are requiring some investment to sort of support and for conservation. So she's really looking at very specific kind of projects to support. And how she does that is by looking at various kind of data sets. Before Earth Blox, she would have to sort of hire consultants to do this. So there's a really long time lag between the time that she wants to make a decision and decide, okay, we're investing in this now, and the time that she actually gets the answer where they actually put their finances. So next slide, please. So let's have a look at how she would go about interacting with Earth Blox, the tool. So as a first user, she would come onto our platform and she would be welcomed. It's like knocking at the door. You come to a new tool, you want to know how it works. So she would be introduced with a small video that just basically gets her running quickly. So how does Earth Blox work? What are the various functionalities that are essential for the initial onboarding? Next slide, please. Then we give option to those data analysts that may not be familiar with Earth observation or remote sensing in general to sort of pick and choose something that resembles what they want to do. So whether that's looking at mangroves or looking at deforestation or looking at potentially degradation instead of deforestation or flooding. So you can pick and choose an area of interest or of focus and then dive into this straight from the go. Next slide, please. If you're an advanced user or someone that actually has played with Earth observation before, then you can go straight into the platform. And here what I'm going to do is just walk you through the sort of the jargon or the sort of the way the tool works. So when we talk about a workflow here throughout my presentation and in the future, if you end up using Earth Blox, a workflow is an assemblage, a collection of blocks. It's an analysis, if you will. So, and in Earth Blox, the way that we work, it's a bit like Lego. So you assemble blocks together that create an analysis, and then you press run and you have your output. So a workflow is really that collection that we can see here in the big blocks. Next slide, please. So on the left hand side is where you find all the blocks. You have three categories of blocks. You have the blue blocks, which are all the input blocks and the boundaries of your analysis. So in the blue box, you can select to work with imagery that is optical imagery, or you can select to work with already existing land cover classes, or you can select to work with fire detection data sets, a huge variety of data sets that are at your fingertips. That's also where you decide to work on specific area. You may select to work in California or Southeast Asia or in Malaga if you want, right? So that's where you define the boundaries of where spatially and temporally you're working. So you can work, over a 40-year period, or you can work on data that was collected last week. The yellow blocks are where you find your analysis. What is it you want to do with that data set? Do you want to look at the time, historically, how things have changed over time, over the past 40 years? Do you want to look at just a point in time? So you sort of look at, the various analysis. Do you want to classify the land? Do you want to look at change detection, or do you want alerts? So the analysis are the yellow blocks. And then ultimately, at last, you have the output. What do you want to see? Do you want to visualize this as a map, or do you want everything tabulated in graphs and as a dashboard? And that's where you can select how this is then produced for you. Next slide, please. That's just an example. Once you've press play, you hear what I selected is the entire of the UK, and I wanted elevation data. So that's a very simple example just to showcase how basically a simple workflow can generate an output very quickly. Next slide, please. Now we're going to dive in the case study, right? So Ashley is interested in Southeast Asia because they're one of our customer. I'm not going to talk about specifically her case study. So we're looking at an area which is similar in practice, but not exactly the area that she's focusing on. So what we're seeing now is she wants to identify areas where you find smallholder palm oil plantation or industrial palm oil plantation combined with villages, primary tropical forests, and potentially agriculture as well. So we're going to classify using various data sets. We're going to classify the land so that she can rapidly identify where she can find these areas, these pockets where you have that confluence of different interest. Next slide, please. Right. So here what I'm doing is I'm looking at Borneo in Indonesia, and I can either select a shapefile, or I could use a drop-down menu where you have all the regions of the world, or draw a polygon. And I'm inserting a new data set. Here you can choose anything from a wide range of data set, including the Google Earth Engine catalog. Here we're looking at Landsat. We're integrating the entire Landsat catalog, and I'm focusing on the area that you can see here in the green. In this case here, I'm going to be looking at 2 years. I'm going to look at selecting all the imagery within the Landsat catalog that covers the year 2021 and 2020. And that's because it's in many places in the world, it's a very cloudy environment. So we want to make sure we have enough of pixels or parts of the imagery that are not covered by clouds. Here I'm basically going to bin all the parts of the images within that collection that I've selected that have a cloud cover more than 70%. And now when I create a composite, I'm going to create a summary image, something that basically brings all the good pixels from all that 2-year period that has a very, very low cloud cover so that I have the equivalent of a summary image. And I'm going to save this data set. So I've created, if you will, an optimum data set from that 2-year period. And I've saved this. And because I work as part of a team, I'm going to write my comments here. I'm explaining to the team what I've done here. I'm tidying up a little bit my workflow. Here we're going to integrate radar data. Radar data is really powerful because it allows you to work with structural information on the land. And here I'm looking at 1 year only because radar is not affected by cloud cover. So I'm going to create here again a composite image that brings all the information that I have over a year. It gives me a lot of information about the structure and how it changes and the seasonality. And I'm saving this data set again. And I'm saving those 2 data sets because I'm going to use this in my classification, just so that I can, with as much accuracy as possible, identify and differentiate the different land classes that exist in this area. Now that's the yellow block. In this case here, I'm looking at classification with, you can select various algorithms, but in this case here, we're leaving it to random forest. That's quite one way machine learning that will help classify the various land. And I integrate the 2 data sets that I created earlier on. I have training data that I'm uploading there, and then I'm bringing my outputs. In this case here, I want to start visualizing this. I want to see, well, what is my classification? Can I identify the villages and the areas where we have a confluence of different interests? I chose a palette here that allows really to visually differentiate between the different land classes. I'm basically tidying up here my workflow. I'm quite a tidy person, so I quite like when things are not looking too messy. So, I mean, this is a workflow that if you had to code this and do this from scratch, and downloading the images could potentially take a few days, right? And we've done this in a few minutes. And that's the power of Earth Blox, really, is being able to see and visualize and conduct analysis and prototyping things in minutes rather than potentially weeks or months if you don't know how to code. So what we have here is the dark green and the teal are the plantation areas. And the sort of lighter green is the more sort of natural forest. The yellow area and the orange are agricultural fields, and the villages and what I call urban, more urban, but villages. In the dashboard, you have the confusion matrices, this sort of accuracy and all these things. That's going to start again. So yes, we can move on to the next slide. So, of course, this went very fast. I mean, this is a webinar, so we have to try to show you as much as possible. We're very excited about Earth Blox, obviously, and I think the idea and the philosophy here is that we want you to be in the driving seat. It's not for us to run the analyses for you because, as in the case with Ashley, for instance, she was interested in identifying those various areas that have a confluence of interest. But there's a lot more she wants to do. She wants to identify those areas and those villages that have access to electricity or not, right? So she can really have optimized the kind of the impact of her financial investment, right? Making sure she supports those communities that really need it. She also wants to look at change detection. Where are the areas where over the course of the past 5 years have experienced extreme deforestation? Can we support that? Not the deforestation, obviously, but can we support, the communities to stop or halt that deforestation? Can we look at historically, what have the patterns been over the past 20 years in this area? Are there things that we can identify as being, early, easy hanging fruit that we can address quite quickly? So that's with the time series. So ultimately, that's what Earth Blox is for, is to give you to give you the power to do your analyses how and when you want them. Next slide, please. This is just a quote from her saying that for her it's been quite pivotal to start working with Earth Blox because she can do the analyses how and when she wants. It's a bit like expanding her team. So it's not a huge team at the moment, so she can do a lot more than if she was relying on consultants and or having to sort of expand her team. There's a lot that she can do on her own or that non-EO expert can do within her team. Next slide, please. These are just small little updates that I want to share with those of you who are familiar with Earth Blox in what our new recent version is allowing you to do. Is that all our blocks are dynamic and intelligent, so that every time you pick a data set, it automatically recognizes the data set that you're working with and only gives you options that are available for that data set. So if you work with Landsat, it will only give you the dates for which the Landsat dataset is available. So you don't run your entire analysis to realize after that actually that that specific date was not available. So all our blocks are intelligent. Next slide, please. All the banding, and that's perhaps for the more advanced Earth observation and remote sensing within the group today, but all the bands are dynamic and standardized so that, and we standardize the labeling as well, so that when we work with red, it's called red. When we work with near infrared, it is called near infrared. When it's called, short near infrared. So basically, whatever data set you're working with, the labeling and the banding is standardized and simple to use. Next slide, please. The same with indices. So we provide you, if you're interested in forestry, we provide you indices that are relevant to forestry. If you work with snow and ice, we provide you the indices that are relevant to snow and ice. And we make things as simple as possible for you so that you can really produce the analyses very quickly. I think that's it for me, Steve.
It is.
Yes.
It is. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. Particularly my role, getting to talk to people on a daily basis to be able to explain this is kind of what the latest iteration of Earth Blox is fantastic. And seeing people's eyes light up when they realise, that example that we've just showed you there around the classification is applicable to all sorts of data sets. There's so much you can do, particularly with that standardization. We're saving so much time, and as we all know, time is money in the world of business and the world of the kind of environment, and particularly for net zero. The more that we can do and the more that we can save, the better. So it's really exciting, and I get excited whenever I see that. So to give you a recap, Earth Blox is giving you the tool. We aren't a consultancy. We're not doing the work for you. We're putting the power in your hand. We're giving you that tool to build and run satellite imagery analysis in minutes, if not seconds, depending on what your use case is. That saves you, as you say, days. That example that we gave around the palm oil could take an advanced user days, maybe a day, to do that. We've managed to do that in a couple of minutes. As part of what we do is we also provide training as well, which we can get to in shortly. But it's cloud hosted and cloud processed. We do all of the pre-processing for you. Your data is secured in your account. All of our customers and all of our users have their own instance of that. You get access to the entire Google Earth Engine data catalog. We have partnerships with other providers as well, where you can get base maps and things like that. And we're expanding this every week and every month as we go forward. We also, like I say, have a customer success team who are on hand to ensure that we deliver the value that you require. So with Earth Blox, you can bring this remote sensing capabilities in-house, controlling everything that you need from the source right through to the delivery of what you want, which reduces your costs while increasing your use of geospatial analysis and insights. I won't read all of the things that are on the screen because it will kind of be too much. But what I will go forward through to say is that if you're interested, you can book an onboarding call. You can either do that through our website, or hopefully, if I can do this now really quickly, there is a link there now in the chat that will take you directly to my diary to allow you to book a meeting whenever you want at your your time and your choosing, so you can talk to us to discuss your requirements about how we may be able to help you, and hopefully we can help you. So what we'll do now is we're going to finish with a thank you. There's an email address there as well if you don't want to go via the meeting link. We're going to stop sharing the presentation, and we're going to open up the floor for questions. I know there's been a couple already in the Q&A, and while I'm doing all of this, I will share the poll results, so just bear with me for 2 seconds. There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that now on the screen with the poll. And I will go to Q&A. Don't be shy. You can ask the questions. You've got the CEO and co-founder, Geneviève Patino, with all of her experience that she spoke about at the beginning. I'll just scroll down on this. You can ask any question you want. I know some have been answered, so hopefully you can see that. It's usually at the bottom of the screen somewhere. This is what people usually do, isn't it? Down there. Couple that have been answered that I will just repeat for everybody. We will share a recording of the session, so you'll be able to get that, and you'll be able to see that and share that with your colleagues, and we'll post that for you. So don't worry about that. We have a couple of questions. So from Stephanie, hopefully Geneviève, you can answer some of these because I'll do my best as well. Do we have an option that helps to differentiate between native forest and planted forest?
So can you hear me? Yes, my sound is there. So typically planted forests are actually generally quite easy to identify between native or, you know, more sort of continuous cover forestry, which looks a bit more native. So planted forests tend to be monospecies plantation, all planted in row, very homogeneous. Thankfully, not so much anymore. So, the answer is it's relatively simple to differentiate both, right? If it's monospecies plantation planted in row compared to native forest, if it's more like Scotland where you have continuous cover forestry, well, you know, it becomes a bit more blurred what a native forest is and what a plantation is if the plantation is trying to mimic biodiverse natural ecosystems. But yeah, actually, typically in this kind of field anyway, what we're really looking for is the differentiation between plantations, you know, which are commercial plantation, teak plantations, or palm oil plantation, and that's just pretty easy to do.
Brilliant. Thank you. Like I say, we have got experts on the call, so that's great. Maxime, do we have data available for every country with the same accuracy? You have projects, I think it says there, in the Ivory Coast. Yes.
Yes, so our data is global. So what we're talking about here is global planetary scale data sets. So the data sets that we make available, typically Landsat, Sentinel, all the various Earth observation data that are either public or commercial, tend to cover pretty much everywhere, depending on orbits and so on. But generally, these cover the areas that we are interested in nature-based solution, right? So perhaps less Antarctica and the Arctic, just because of the orbits, but normally all the data sets cover the commercially, if you will, active areas of the world.
Perfect, thank you. So next question, they're coming in. There's quite a few actually, so this is great. Keep them coming. If we end early, don't worry about it. You get some time back wherever you are in the world to put your feet up, maybe. So Gabriella, curious to learn about how the data that feeds Earth Blox was processed.
So basically, the data that feeds Earth Blox is analysis ready. So I mean, this is a huge question, right? So again, we would need to speak with you to understand what you mean by process, because there's a huge amount of processing that goes into making analysis ready data. Different data set mean different things. So if we're talking about radar data, making the radar data analysis ready is very different from making optical data analysis ready, how the clouds were removed, atmospheric corrections, all of these things. But we basically make sure that the data that you have in your hands is ready, and pre-processed to make sure that you have the best quality data sets to work with. And that's done by by NASA, by it's it's the cream of the cream, right? So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, if anybody has follow-up questions to any of these, please feel free again to type them. We're checking all of them. So Daniela, do you have an overall accuracy value for the classifications?
Yes, I mean, as in I showed a dashboard at the end, and I recognize it was quick, right? You probably didn't have time to see this, but you've got all the confusion matrices, you've got producer, and all the all the stats that you need for assessing the quality of the classification is available to you. And obviously, you have to upload some elements, your training data. But yes, this is all automatically provided to you.
Brilliant. So I'm going through these as they've come in. So if your question hasn't been answered, bear with us. John Atkinson, do you have pre-built routines to measure tree biomass?
So tree biomass is a bit more challenging, right? Because if you think about the way that remote sensing works, is that it's an image from the top, and typically you see the full canopy. But where the biomass really lies is in the trunk, right? And is in the wood, not in the leaves, not in the needles. It's really in the wood. But you could have a massive canopy with a very tiny, depending on the tree species. However, there are some constant. The amount of carbon in trees is roughly 0.5, the biomass. There are some very simple metrics that can really help assess the total amount of carbon. So with radar, it's basically no roadmap, right? So we can help you get to sort of a volume quantity, but in no roadmap, our next step is to give you the tree biomass. But there remains some work that needs to be done on a field, or from structural information that you need to have from the ground. If someone tells you the opposite, they're telling you a story, because with satellite imagery at the moment, it is not possible to give you the full, but we can give you a range, right? The biomass within this stand is roughly between X and X.
Yeah. If anybody does tell you otherwise, let us know, because I'd be interested in seeing that. That would be great. An anonymous, I'm jumping a question because somebody anonymously asked a question that is very similar, that I will just touch on a bit further. So can the tool monitor the changes in above ground biomass, and can it provide accurate measurements of carbon removal in trees in reforestation projects? Genevieve's answer is one of those already. The other is, it's in our roadmap. We've got customers who are doing this kind of work already. They're trialing with the supervised classification that you've seen, how they can get that, combining it with ground truthing to try and get a more generalized view. So it is kind of in the roadmap and developing as we go along. And that's part, I guess, just to touch upon our model. We work closely with our customers to drive the product. We have a product team. We talk to our customers regularly. We get feedback on what they're looking for, and that helps us drive that as well. Anything you wanted to add, Genevieve?
Yes, I do want to add. So because we have time series available, and you can look over time, what's important about the change in biomass is the growth, right? So there's three kinds of changes in biomass. Either your forest is growing, and therefore you have an increase in carbon storage in the forest, or the forest stores the carbon, or you've got degradation, so you can't see it, right? You've got the top canopies, the trees that hide what's happening underneath, but you've got some species that disappear underneath because they're high value timber, for instance. And then you have deforestation. So deforestation is the easiest, right? You see clear cut, basically. Degradation you can is with radar because it's sensitive to structure. You can also, there are techniques for you to within Earth Blox to identify that the degradation is happening. And growth, the same. You can also see growth, up to the point that the tree is really mature. And when it doesn't grow anymore in height or expands sidewise, it only increases in diameter. That differential in growth is harder to detect with Earth observation, but everything else is actually relatively easy to do within Earth Blox.
Brilliant. No, there's more questions are coming in. This is great. I'm loving this. So Surya is asking that they have been tasked to monitor the afforestation status with local government and how it's impacting the environment. Can this type of analysis be done on the platform without much coding? Yes, it can be done without any coding. You also ask a question about whether or not you can see it. Yes, Surya, I will follow up with you. And we can talk about that and how we can work it. Or if you go into the chat function, my email is there, and you can also book a meeting directly, as I've already said. So we can definitely help you, absolutely. Next question: what underlying technology do you use to do the analysis? Well, we can't answer all of the questions. So we have our own IP. It's all cloud processed. I will leave it at that.
It's pretty complex, really. I mean, yes. That's a really big question, right? What underlies what IP is under the iPhone, right? It's this is a highly advanced there's a lot of it's a complex question to answer.
It is, yeah. Another anonymous question: is there a data set that includes classification, identification specifically of roads in order to identify these as deforestation drivers? I actually think the example we gave isn't far off.
Yeah, actually, so with time series, if you look, road building is obviously one of the key drivers of deforestation, but it's pretty easy to see that it is a driver of deforestation, right? Because the road is built in the middle of the forest first. So second, it grows like fish bones. So you see from one month to another, you just see it grow, road, 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 road. So with the time series, and we're now building alerts. So if you're interested in an area where and an area of interest, we're in the process of building alerts that will just keep monitoring that area of interest. And as soon as something happens in there, you'll receive a text in your phone that says, actually, something's happening here. Just double check. But so the point here is that roads classification, I don't think it's roads are they're either in urban areas or they're in the middle of the forest, and if they grow, that's the identification of your how it drives deforestation. So yeah. It's easy to spot.
Yeah, so I guess the easy answer is yes, we can do that. Yeah. But yeah, thank you very much, Geneviève. Stephanie is back around the question about native and planted forests. So there's a follow-up question. They have many pine and eucalyptus plantations in South America that don't follow a plantation pattern, and they look very similar to a native forest. Do we still consider that would be easier to differentiate them from native forests?
Yeah, so that is absolutely that's a perfect example of where it is more difficult, and that's where within Earth Blox you have a lot of ancillary data. It's not just Earth observation data, right? You've got lots of different other data sets like dynamic world, a huge range, population data set. It's not Earth observation alone. That's where the power of Earth, I think, the power of Earth Blox lies, is that you can bring situational awareness to your classification. So being able to bring other kind of data sets that would help you have a hunch, okay, I think actually here this is not, because it's there are trucks coming in, or there, whatever your situational awareness is of that area. By bringing in various kind of data sets, you're able to sort of help your classification that way.
Perfect. Last question, which I'm happy to answer because it's around case studies from Nikos related. Have we got any case studies related to ESG? I guess it depends exactly what you're looking for when you talk about ESG. But if you go to our website, we have a number of case studies there, and we have more coming out. So we've got work with insurers, we've got work that we've done with the United Nations around climate risk modeling, and we've got some more case studies coming out shortly around biodiversity. If that
We'd love to
doesn't,
speak to you about it,
yeah,
though,
yeah,
to understand what it is that you actually need, so that, yeah,
yeah,
we can
I think
answer
so.
that.
Yeah, it's just, so I will post a link directly to that in the chat, so you can see it as well. Go, oh, maybe I won't. Give me 2 seconds. There's always some form of yeah, problem, isn't there? Where is it? There we go. Oh no, it's not working. I'll email you, Nikos. Don't worry, I'll email you. But yeah, it'd be interesting to know a bit more. So I think that's all of the questions. If there's any more, get them in quickly. If not, what we'll do is we'll give you your time back. But what final word from myself is thank you very much for joining. All of the questions are great. Love answering those questions. Love being able to have Genevieve here to answer them as well, and to show you the latest iteration of Earth Blox and how it can help with your nature-based solutions. And also not just NbS. If you're here for something else, we can do all other aspects, as we were talking about a second ago. Bringing that in-house is what we're aiming to do. So I'll leave it up for a little bit to see if there's any more questions, but anything you want to add, Genevieve? Anything final?
No, a huge thank you for joining, and we'd be delighted to help.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I already have emails from people who have joined. So yeah, my info's there if you want it. But thank you very much for joining. We will send out an email following up. But if you have any further interest, let us know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.